Be one roll away from legendary. And attend the Rising Phoenix Game Con at the Milford Doubletree, April 21st through 23rd. You can play games, run games, meet like-minded individuals and gamers. Get your tickets now for Rising Phoenix Game Con.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dungeon Masters Dojo podcast. This is a show for game masters and players alike. We hope to bring you tips and tricks to elevate your game and develop the art of dungeon mastery. I'm your host, Louis Aponte, and these are your dungeon masters, Scott Labby and Bill Robitaille. Let's enter the dojo and see what they have in store for us today.
Presents? We have presents.
Yes, I've often been told I have quite a presence.
No, you haven't.
You got to put cricket sounds in that pause right there.
I have some too.
We have a book, and it's not from Wizards of the Coast.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes.
It's a good book.
It
looks it.
It's a glorious tome, and it is, the cover is graced by a beautiful depiction of a battle scene. And you know what makes it beautiful? The orcs make it beautiful. And you know why the orcs make it beautiful?
Do tell. I want to know why the orcs
Observe,
make it
regard the orcs.
beautiful. Allow me to you're trying to make me do this without my glasses.
They're pig-faced orcs. They're porcine in appearance.
Yes.
And that is how orcs were.
In the old days.
They were pig-like in appearance. Not entirely different than the Gamorrean guards, though.
Yeah, just not green, usually.
Or morbidly obese.
And morbidly obese, yes.
Yeah.
And often they wore clothes.
Yes, thank goodness. Armor and the whatnot. These orcs on the front cover are dressed in kind of like a pseudo-samurai sort of scale armor.
Sounds like you're talking something from way, way back when.
I am.
Well, please take a moment and explain why we're perusing this particular piece of wondrous artwork.
Because A, we are old and nostalgic.
And remember it.
Yep. The few things we remember. And B, Lewis has serious spending issues.
Which can be oftenly confirmed by his wife when he comes in and goes, I've been shut off from Amazon.
Again, yet he still buys shit.
Yeah.
Thank God she doesn't list. If she does, I'm sorry. You're now in trouble.
I'm going to be in trouble.
It's nothing she doesn't already know about.
So this is 5th edition conversion and classic homage to module. That's what they called adventures. Modules.
And what I still call them.
Yes, and they should still call them those. B1, they were numbered and alphabetized. And lettered. In Search of the Unknown. And B2, The Keep on the Borderlands. Two of my favorites. Keep on the Borderlands was my first. Yes, this is the
You were deflowered by the Borderlands?
This is the module that took the D&D virginity of many of us in the late 70s, early 80s. Keep on the Borderlands. And this has been beautifully converted to 5th edition by Goodman Games, specifically Chris Doyle and Tim Wadzinski.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes. It's got the same cover, cover art. It is far larger than Keep on the Borderlands or In Search of the Unknown, but I think that is because it is a perhaps later rendition of both modules. I think modules back then were, maybe 60 pages?
50 to 70, I would say.
Yeah, 50 to 70. But keep in mind, the old modules left a lot of artistic license for the Game Master.
A ton, about 40 pages worth of artistic license.
To say nothing of the lack of description on several of the monsters, magic items, some of the places you went. And as Lou was so gracious to point out, a lot of that has been rectified in this particular tome, where
Yes, yeah.
it's been added to. So when they fifth edified it, they decided to flesh out those descriptions. So the page count has exponentially gone up.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why many of the people from our generation of, not just D&D, but gaming in general, because D&D was not the only
Oh, by no means.
game.
And not even the first.
Right. Why we function better with less rules and less just stuff and fluff, because
We didn't have it.
We didn't have any of it. Right? It's like, well, I don't need a rule for that. Well, why don't you need a rule for that? Because I can deal with it on the fly. Well, you can't do that. Oh, yes, you can, good sir. So I beseech all the youngsters to come over to the dark side, because we use less paper. And
Trees were safer.
we're better for the environment. But this is a beautifully thick book, and it's hardcover when the modules weren't.
That's right.
True.
They were 8.5 by 11. They were more magazines than anything else. Higher quality paper, thicker paper than the magazines.
Much thicker cover, too.
Yeah, but it was still a lightweight, portable adventure that you can spend a couple evenings, perhaps a month worth of gameplay if you meet once a week.
Yep.
Playing. And this brings back waves and waves of nostalgia.
And that's just the cover.
And that is
We
just that's
haven't
just the
cracked
cover.
it yet.
Yeah, so this is from the basic set of Dungeons and Dragons. There was basic, expert,
Advanced.
well, it was basic, expert, was it masters, companion, and then there was one where you could achieve like immortality and stuff like that, and I thought that was kind of bullshit, but I own it nonetheless. But that was the basic set, which, much like Homo sapien and Neanderthal, it coexisted with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which was a different game almost entirely.
I genuinely thought he was going to say Bill.
I can see that.
I genuinely thought he was going to say they existed with Bill.
Yeah. Well, I think they already know that, right?
Well,
I think listeners
that-
already know that.
If you listen to more
Yeah.
than 4 episodes.
You had these two games when we were growing up, and they were both Dungeons and Dragons, but it was some copyright stuff going on where, Gary Gygax, I know I always mispronounce his name, and I think
Gygax.
Yeah, Gygax. I think of Tim Kask in
Yes,
the
he did.
background, correcting me on that. I'll get it eventually.
No, he won't.
Probably not.
Not.
I will try so hard to.
There's some tricks that old dog will not learn.
But I think he was doing the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons game, and there was some conflict with, was it Dave Arneson?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did
Blackmore.
the basic set though
Yeah.
too, didn't he? I don't know, such a long time ago, but
It all blends together.
yeah, and
And Lou will fact check us and
yeah, tell us we're wrong.
tell us we're wrong or
and
just delete stuff that we say.
because he knows how to use the Google. But I will say, in one of these days, I would really like to sit down and share with our listeners the rules cyclopedia, which was like from Dungeons and Dragons, not Advanced Dungeons and
Yep.
Dragons, or AD&D 2.5 or 3 or 3.0. Or,
Every incarnation after that. Don't say that.
but yeah,
That's a 4-letter word.
it is. Yeah, it is.
He just got it.
And there's layers to that. Very clever. But the rules cyclopedia was perhaps the best, I would say, and most complete version of the D&D rules that was ever written, in my opinion. Other people would disagree, I'm sure. But you get a nice table of contents in this book. The paper quality is nice. I mean, it's heavy.
Inside cover.
Yeah, inside
What
cover.
do you see?
You get a map, so there's
Yeah, but not only is it just a map, but it's on graph paper.
graph paper. Our maps were on graph paper. They weren't fancy. There were a
Nope.
lot of lines and blocks and stuff like that, and blue backgrounds. But I really like how they didn't like kind of upscale the
They
map.
didn't try to modernize it.
Right. And there's a lot of the old artwork, like the Minotaurs and stuff like that that were, well, this Minotaur, I don't remember this one, but I remember the one wearing the chain armor with the short sleeves. And
Actually, I think this is a fiend.
it's hard to tell.
Yeah. Well,
It was hard to tell back then, too.
Yeah,
true.
it was. And nobody cared. It was
Well,
like,
they did
yeah,
artwork and it went, we need something for this. Close
drop
enough.
it in there. That'll work. You get 369 pages.
It's a beefy tome.
That is a textbook, only it's not shitty to read. That's the biggest difference. And
But you will be quizzed at the end.
but you
By your
certainly
players,
will.
but you will be quizzed at the end.
So one of the things I like to do is when there's a book like this, I like to open it, and it made a horrible sound, and I thought I saw Lewis wince, but it was some cracking noise. But this book, as massive as it is, when I open it up, it's opened about roughly halfway.
Yep.
It lays flat, right? And that's important because if you're running the game and you got the book open, it's got this beautiful bookmark thing. I don't even. There's a fancy word for it. I don't remember it.
Bookmark?
No, this little
It's a little cloth.
the cloth
tab.
thingy that the cloth bookmark. There's got to be a fancy word for it. I bet you the British invented it.
I'm sure the other end of it's up here on the top.
Yeah.
So.
So that's nice. You keep your place very easily. But if you're running a game, right, you got a table full of people sitting around. You don't want to keep trying to find that page or stick a pencil in there because the pages want to go flipping back, and there's nothing more frustrating than that. So in that aspect, that's pretty
Well,
well thought out.
That's part of a tribute to the heavyweight paper they're using.
Yep. Which, I mean, it's easy to go chintzy on stuff like this.
And a lot of it too
still
is
charge a lot of
because
money.
it's such a large book. It's the way it's bound, helps assist that as well.
Yes. It's I mean, we never had the problem with the book closing up with the modules because they were never big enough, and you could always bend the shit out of them to get them to lay flat anyway,
And they're held together by staples.
Staples, yeah,
So
two staples, that's it.
Yeah.
This, I mean, and I opened up to another map, and it's I'm going to say it's the same map from Keep on the Borderlands.
We did a brief little skim through, and we'll flip you back here a little bit. That's the back cover to B1.
Yep.
All they did was just scan it and print it, and the front cover artwork is the same thing.
Yeah, and
They had the original artwork from the maps.
there was
or
something
from the modules.
about the artwork back then that it certainly wasn't as good as the artwork now, or maybe that's the wrong way to put it. It was.
Let's take a moment to talk about our sponsor.
Are you a veteran DM with more campaign ideas than prep time? Yeah, of course you are. Aren't we all? What if I were to tell you that I could put a team of professional writers alongside you at your desk to cut down on your campaign prep? What if I were to tell you that you could bring them along with you at your game sessions for when those pesky players go off the rails? Sounds pretty good, huh? With Describe, we could do just that. These narratives vividly describe monsters, places, spells, people, you name it. It's there. And there are more than 6,000 of these easy to search up, copy and pastable, beautifully written narratives right at your fingertips. When I was prepping for an Acorns Journey, a D&D story, I used Describe quite a bit. When you listen, you can hear it. One of the things I like the most about Describe is that if the narrative doesn't fit perfectly with your encounter, it's easy to modify while still sounding really good. Describe has graciously provided us with a discount for our listeners. Head on over to describe.com/DMD. Use the code DMD at checkout to try Describe for 2 weeks free. Links will be in the show notes.
And now, back to the show.
It conveyed fantasy. It conveyed
There you go.
fantastic stuff going on.
Well, every picture, for the most part, told a story. It wasn't like
Yeah.
a headshot.
Yep.
There's a glamour shot of this and a glamour shot of that, and a dragon. All right, and here you find a dragon, and he's usually starting to breathe fire or trying to, and there's a group of people trying to defend themselves and or attack, and then there was the background. I mean, all these pieces of artwork convey a story.
Yep.
Where artwork today is they're looking for the beauty shot.
Yeah. It's like
And don't get me
underwear
wrong,
models.
it's gorgeous.
It is.
But that's the different. It's a different style of artwork.
Yes, it is. And the thing with the artwork conveying a story is, especially on the front cover, because let's be honest, people judge a book by its cover, right?
Quite literally.
Yeah. And you look at this, and I remember going to Tin Soldier, Pony Soldier,
Dragon's Lair, and all those 391 Darts and Hobby or 301 Darts and Hobby, all those 301.
All those long dead gaming shops that were in our area, and looking through the modules and going, this is what's going on. And that picture kind of jumped out at you, and you're like, cool, there's going to be adventure. There's going to be like a mushroom forest. I can see my players or myself as one of those adventurers depicted on the front cover.
That's because I think, at least the way I look at it, while it's primitive by today's standards, the artwork, it was a primitive and primal drawing, and that's how I see the artwork.
Yep, true.
Yeah, and it told a tale in volumes,
and it was still early on, so this style of artwork was still in its infancy as well. And you had people like, all right, you want me to draw a what?
Yeah, and a lot of these guys that they had, from what I understand, and is not based on any research or anything that I've done beyond like laying in bed and watching Dave Weil's YouTube videos. That's my research I conduct. But a lot of these guys were comic book artists in some way, shape, or form. So it had a comic booky kind of feel and look to it, especially when you got the colored drawings, because they were bright.
Yes.
And vibrant colors. And I think that's why they told a tale, right? Because you pick up a comic book, there's no narrative in that mostly. Mm-hmm. You need to figure out what's going on by watching the action shots. And the action shots were big and over the top.
Especially the full page action shot. And that's what you're getting
in
the artwork for the covers and a lot of your chapter breaks. You'll find a couple of really nice pieces in the middle. I don't know so much about the modules, but I know some of the other publications are out there, like Polyhedron and White Dwarf. You actually had centerfolds in there.
Yeah, yep.
With huge pieces of artwork that were
beautiful.
Really, really nice.
Beautiful, but to have artwork like this in there and not try to hire artists to reproduce it or make it different or better or whatever have you is really cool, because.
Well, yeah, if you're printing the original modules, I mean, granted they've been modified, but you don't need to modify the artwork.
No, you don't, because what is this artwork and this even the actual adventurer is laid out much in the same fashion.
Yes.
That it was like some 40 years ago. But what that does is, I'm looking at and I know this is why Lou bought it. I'm looking at this and I'm remembering, like, every time I sat down and ran Keep on the Borderlands and had a blast, or every time I played Keep on the Borderlands, it's a nostalgia. Even if we're never going to play this, right? It's that nostalgia piece. So people from our generation are going to want to have it.
I can see someone of our age thumbing through this and reading it, and even if they, like I said, even if they didn't never plan on running it, just to read it through and go, all right, who was that at my table? And it was Lou and it was Scott. And who else was there? Rob was there, and his brother Mike, and and there's someone else. Oh, it'll come to me. And the nostalgic juices finally start flowing. And who knows what kind of interest something like this could rekindle from someone who stepped away from the game for a while. And one of their friends goes, "Hey, remember this?"
And that's exactly why I bought the books, because they reminded me so much of the old games.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just looking at this book brings back memories not necessarily related to this, but it's like, there was all the was it Castle of the Silver Princess, the X modules for the expert set, Isle of Dread and stuff like that. Just the vibe and the feel you get from this, because the basic set introduced you to the game, and it was like a dungeon crawl.
Yeah.
The expert set,
actual dungeon crawls.
Yeah, the expert set opens it up to wilderness exploration.
Shows you the rest of the world.
Yeah. And it had a beautifully set up world, the whole campaign world of Mystara.
Mm-hmm.
And you got bits and pieces, you got little tastes of it in the different in basic and in expert, and it was such a very well plotted out world and had one of the best, I think the only Gazetteer series in the game. And those were fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
That is hands down my favorite D&D world.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
Is Mystara. But even then, it's like, you know what? For someone like my oldest son plays D&D and other tabletop RPGs, which is nice to see because it's a hobby that I loved. And I hope, at some point in time, if he hasn't already, he'll develop that same kind of joy out of the game and playing it and having fun. And perhaps, if it's still around when his child is of an age to play it, he would get that same joy out of it. But this is a way to kind of, and Lou has kids too. Like this is what we had. This is like, the module series that I remember
exactly
the most.
Yep. The only difference is this has been converted to 5th ed.
Yeah. And very well.
The
too.
artwork
Like,
is all
really,
original. It's all, and it's reproduced very well.
Mm-hmm.
And hardcover.
Yep.
So it's solid and it weighs a ton.
Yeah,
I mean, it's heavy.
It is a beefy book.
You can beat someone to death with it, quite literally.
Don't mind the blood stain on that corner.
Yeah. I was going to ask you how much you paid for it, but apparently you didn't. It's
Be careful where you go to pick up your Craigslist stuff, people.
just like the back of the game, right? The back of the book has a couple pages of advertisements, and every single everything you bought from TSR had that same thing where you have a couple advertisements for either different books in the series or remember Dragon Magazine.
Yeah, Dragon Magazine even had White Dwarf. And you always seen those two in the back. Another one, they were pitching the RPGA quite a bit, and you can get your free subscription for Polyhedron Magazine. So those were pitched back there. And then you could, the few gaming shops, a lot of them were out Midwest where, the game started and things like that. So there's a few big gaming shops that would advertise there. And once again, our Dragon's Lair advertised back there quite a bit too.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
but they have, it's Dungeon Crawl Classics, Lankmar. They show all the books in their series. A very old-timey looking Dungeon Crawl Classics advertisement on the other side of
advertising page.
Yeah, and then they have a bunch of the old artwork, front and back covers, and it's so cool.
He's drooling.
There's
a nostalgic drool going.
Yeah, I it's for me, it's waves of nostalgia. I feel like I'm, like 12 years old again, sitting on my bed in my bedroom, reading this book, getting ready for, game night.
Now, see, I look at it slightly different.
Bill was 67 at the time I was 12, so.
I never ran the modules. I would read through them, and I'd pull them apart and use pieces of different modules and put it together and make my own encounters. So I think the only one I ever actually ran was the Gauntlet.
That's an oldie.
That's real, yeah. And, they didn't even have color. The cover was green and white.
A lot of them were like that, too.
Yeah,
a lot of these, they were they would sell convention modules.
Yeah.
And they were just like a pale, like generic food from Jimmy Carter's administration, right?
Yes.
Where you bought a can of carrots with a white label that said carrots in black font on it.
One of the funnest thing I ever bought was a case of beer.
Yeah.
And it was a white can with black letter. It just said beer.
Yep. You damn kids don't know how good you have it. We lived through the satanic panic, the Carter administration with gas lines and
32-pound tub of government peanut butter.
Yep.
They had to stir every time because 4 quarts of oil settled to the top.
Yeah. Yep.
They didn't have to have those chips with that. I forgot, what was that?
Olestra.
Yeah,
Olestra. You read the back of the bag and it said may cause anal leakage. I'm like, anal leakage? I don't want a fucking potato chip that bad. I don't want my butt to leak. What, oil's gonna leak out of my butt? Yeah, because your body couldn't digest it. I get. Yeah,
it passed straight through.
Yeah. No thanks. That was at the peak of Richard Simmons' popularity, where everything was Everything was fat-free, and nobody had any sort of like estrogen or testosterone because they didn't have enough fat in their system to produce hormones. So everybody who worked out in like their late 70s, early 80s looked like Richard Simmons. Big fan of Richard Simmons. Sweating to the oldies. We'll do our review of Sweating to the Oldies this summer.
I'll hold out for the 20-minute workout.
Yeah, we're waiting. Yeah. That one's even better with Best Moda. All right, but
we digress.
We digress.
We usually do, but
how much was this absolutely beautiful book?
That book was $50.
$50. You know what? I'm going to say that. I mean, our Wizards of the Coast books are around this price range,
and about 100 pages smaller.
Yeah. And that's giving it a lot of credit. This I'd pay like $75 for this book, but
that's what I expect you to say, $65, $70.
Yeah.
So.
Nope, that one I believe was $50.
$50 is a reasonable price, in my opinion.
That's
for
a pretty
book
cheap.
Of this quality.
That's a pretty cheap ticket to go down memory lane.
It is.
It is.
Well, and if you want to run them, you got two
Yeah.
modules there.
You have you have two
good,
modules,
really
so
big ones too.
beefy.
Yeah.
You could. I mean, you won't. Just with the stuff in this book, you probably won't get a year's worth of play out of it. But you'll get a decent amount of play. I mean, you'll get a few months.
Oh yeah.
Depending on how fast your players move through things, but you will get an idea of what the game was like back when we first started. If you started around the time we did, you'll get a whole bunch of nostalgia. I think everybody has been to the Borderlands that's ever played D&D, and if you haven't, take a trip.
You need to go.
Take a trip. It is a good introductory module. If I was to run a game, the first game for a group of like brand new players or kids at like a school D&D club or something,
yep.
I would reach for Keep on the Borderlands. I would try to print out a PDF of the old game, but now I wouldn't have to because there's this beautiful book.
It'll be in my library.
And a hell of a, what's the word I'm looking, value.
Yeah.
Well, I think about it. How much was that? We did a review on that Stranger Things. How much was that?
That was...
You know, the empty box?
Yeah, the empty box was like $24.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Okay.
For twice the price, you can get 100 times the material.
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and Goodman Games, man, bravo.
Kudos, guys. Kudos.
Yeah. So is it worth it? Lewis, what do you think?
For me, it definitely is worth it.
I think it's more than worth it. I think it's a necessity for anyone that started pre 2.0. You have to get this. You have to get this. And even if you didn't, if you started 2.5, somewhere there, all right, you need to see where your roots are. This is the ancestor right here. And,
That's right.
And this is where you need to go to see where everything came from. So, yeah, absolutely.
Well
Must.
said. Very well said. And if you just getting into the game, this is worth it. This is worth it.
It's the
even
perfect game to start off.
It absolutely is. And I hope they do more. I hope they have more because the overtime at work is still coming. So I think I think I might be going to the Goodman Games website and seeing what they got in store just to grace my bookshelf with it.
Because he has the disease.
Yes, he does.
I love it.
And that's our look into the Borderlands. We'll see you next time in the dojo.
That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo. Or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.